The US election is in 2 days, and polls show the race to the White House is too close to comfort. Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Kamala Harris are neck and neck in this historic election. While public opinion polls are unclear, the financial market has made its mind. For the last couple of weeks, the so-called Trump trade has been buzzing, from stock markets, bonds, currencies, and even cryptocurrencies moving in directions that indicate the possible return of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States. But how do investment instruments like stocks or bonds predict who's winning? What do their movements tell us about this election? And can they determine voter sentiment? Let's try to understand. Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris have each outlined their policy proposals. These policies would affect different parts of the financial market. Let's start with stocks. Historically, Wall Street tends to favor Republican candidates on tax cuts and business-friendly policies. During Trump's last term, he followed through on these promises. In 2017, the Trump administration lowered the federal corporate tax from 35% to 21%. In his new term, the former president aims to reduce it further, this time to just 15%.
Corporate tax revenues are 31% higher today than before my tax law was signed. With all of those cuts, 31% higher. To further support the revival of American manufacturing, my plan calls for expanded R&D tax credits, 100% bonus depreciation, expensing for new manufacturing investments, and a reduction in the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15% solely for companies that make their product in America.
An analysis from Bank of America says this tax cut could boost corporate earnings by 4%. Market analysts say that if investors anticipate a future Trump administration, they would be betting on stocks of firms that could benefit from such cuts, like consumer discretionary and communication services. The Republican presidential candidate's other policies, like a crackdown on illegal immigration and support for gun ownership, is also expected to benefit some firms, especially companies that run private prisons or manufacture firearms. And as the election date approaches, these stocks are seeing gains. For example, stocks of American prison operators Core Civic and GEO Group have risen over 11% and 18% respectively in the last month. Another stock being closely monitored is Donald Trump's own firm, the Trump Media and Technology Group. The firm was listed in the stock market earlier this year, and it has gained over 119% in the last month. But not every stock market may benefit from a potential Trump return. Donald Trump has also promised to impose higher import tariffs on goods from China. Analysts say his proposal would be inflationary and would drive up the cost of daily use items and hurt the profits of companies. A study by the Tax Foundation says the tariff plan would lower earnings of S&P 500 companies by over 3%.
Tariffs are, of course, he has threatened a 20% tariff, but he says, I'm using that as a bargaining tool. 20% tariff would cause a lot of macroeconomic changes, and that's something that a president can do pretty much unilaterally without congressional approval. That would cause more inflation. It would also cause a rising dollar.
Meanwhile, a Kamala Harris victory could mean a vastly different outcome for the share market. She has proposed to raise the corporate tax rate from the current 21% to 28%, which analysts say would put pressure on earnings of companies. Bank of America has warned that a Harris win could hit corporate profits by as much as 5%. However, there are expected bright spots. Her plans to build 3 million houses could boost home builder stocks. Meanwhile, renewable energy stocks could also benefit since the Democrats support a faster transition to wind and solar power. Both of these sectors have seen positive momentum during periods when Harris gained in the polls. According to data compiled by Glenview Trust, Strategis and Bloomberg, the stock market has usually gained on election day, barring extreme circumstances. In the last 5 presidential election days, the S&P 500 only dropped in 2008 when Barack Obama was elected, though this was largely attributed to a brewing financial crisis. Another key component of the financial market is bonds. The bond market is a platform where the government, banks and businesses raise funds for both long and short-term needs. It's often regarded as a barometer of the economy's health. The performance of the US bond market is closely tied to interest rates. Bond prices typically fall as rates rise and vice versa. In September, the US Federal Reserve reduced its interest rate. The country's inflation has been easing since the start of the year. It is widely expected to continue with the interest rate cuts, and that would mean that bond prices would see a rise. According to experts, a Trump win could deter the Federal Reserve from its current path and hurt the bond market.
If the Republicans sweep and do all the tax cuts that Trump has been talking about, with no increases in taxes except for tariffs, which has its danger, that would cause more of a bond market, negative bond market reaction in the bond market.
And it's already happening. Recently, the US bond market experienced its worst sell-off in 6 months. Treasury prices have fallen sharply, driven by data showing strong economic activity in the United States. This has cast doubt on whether or not the Federal Reserve will once again cut interest rates, and the meeting where this decision will be made is just 2 days after the November 5th election. The US dollar is also set to be influenced by the White House race. If Donald Trump retakes the Oval Office, Morgan Stanley suggests that his proposed tariff policies could strengthen the dollar. This is because foreign investors may view the US as a more stable investment destination. Conversely, the American Investment Bank says Vice President Kamala Harris would likely maintain the Biden administration's approach, with continuity in trade and less fiscal expansion, which could lead to a weaker dollar. And then there's cryptocurrencies. They have become an indicator of a Trump trade. Bitcoin and other virtual assets are seeing rallies ahead of the election. A Trump win could continue this momentum in the crypto space, since he has promised to provide a more supportive environment for cryptos. Trump has even launched his own digital currency. The Republican is also heavily backed by Elon Musk, who's also a crypto enthusiast. With election knocking on the door, stocks, bonds, currencies and crypto are all sending a message. With a tight race and polarizing candidates, the market is waiting to see if Trump's America First policies will return, or if a Harris-led White House will shift the economic landscape.
Firstpost decodes the U.S. election, explains how America chooses its president. Your primer on the race to the White House. Everything you need to know about how America votes and its global implications. U.S. Election Explained, every Monday and Thursday only on Firstpost.